This is the Infinite Receiving Podcast, helping conscious leaders tap into a wealth of abundance across all areas of your life and business. I'm Susie Ashworth, and I'll be sharing with you how you can upgrade your reality through quantum transformation, because you are ready for infinite receiving. Hello, gorgeous. You are going to love this episode. I am introducing you to a friend, a fellow life coach, the host of the Future Self podcast, Pete Cohen. He is an incredible man with an incredible story. In 2011, his late wife was diagnosed with terminal cancer, and in May of this year, she passed away. And ultimately, Pete shares a story of grief, hope, and inspiration in a way that I haven't heard really anybody speak just from such a grounded, truthful, honest, authentic place, laced, dripping, drenched in generosity and heart, so soon after the passing of a loved one. And so I know that whether you have had a similar experience or not, you are going to be deeply, deeply inspired by the heart of this man. So without any further ado, I'm going to zip it so we can get on with the episode. Hello, you gorgeous human beings. It is Susie Ashworth here, and you are listening to the Infinite Receiving podcast. And I have got a juicy one for you today. I'm really excited to introduce you to a man whose paths I've crossed actually for many years. I've seen like snippets and flashes of his work, and then at the beginning of this year, which almost feels like years ago, this has been feels like it's been a very long year. We met at a live podcast recording, and I heard your story from a different lens and from a different perspective, and I'm really happy to have you on the podcast to introduce you to some of my audience. So without any further ado, Pete Cohen, welcome to the Infinite Receiving podcast. How you doing?
Thank you, Susie. Yeah, no, I can remember meeting you like it was yesterday. And it's amazing how much has happened in a year. I agree with you. This seems to be one of the longest years I can ever remember.
For sure. Well, we are going to get to that for you. Would you like to? I'd love to hear how you describe what it is that you do and why you do it.
So if I was describing to someone who doesn't know what I do, I would say that I help people walk a path that is a path that only they can walk. It's a path to their own inner world, helping them kind of understand more about who they are, and where they can actually go. So it's that landscape that only an individual can. No one else can go to the land of your inner world. And that's just a wonderful place to go and explore with people, and then open up their mind to the possibilities that exist for them to reinvent themselves, to overcome trauma, to attract what it is they want to attract, to be happy, to be more fulfilled. And I'm 53, Susie, and I genuinely feel like I've only just got started.
God, I feel one, emotional, two, exactly the same. When you say I feel like I'm only just getting started, like I really feel like that. There was one thing that you said in there. In fact, everything that you said really resonates with me. One of the pillars of infinite receiving is knowing your infinite and unique greatness. And I feel like everything that you just said is encapsulated in that pillar. I'm interested in the reinvention part because I think that, at least from my perspective, what I want to do is help people know the fullness of who they are, their true essence. And so it is really, sometimes I call it a remembering, sometimes it is just coming back to yourself And I'm curious about your perspective on coming back to yourself versus reinvention. Is it even a versus?
Yeah, I think my work in this field is ever evolving, and I think what I've realized now, I think for a long time I was encouraging people to build a relationship to their future self, but now I'm much more encouraged to kind of signpost to people that let's just stop. Let's stop where we are. Let's not go anywhere, because in order to go anywhere, I think it's essential that you stop first and you look at the experience of being yourself. So you kind of audit where you are, not to judge, not to blame, not to shame, just to look at the experience of being yourself with a fresh pair of eyes. And that's a big challenge in itself, right? Because we live in a world that never really stops. But it seems to be those really difficult moments that many of us face where we do actually stop, whether that's a prognosis, a diagnosis, someone passing away, something happened, we lose a job, all of a sudden everything stops. But I think it's nice when you don't have to wait for those things to happen. So you can just take time out to pause and look at yourself with a fresh pair of eyes. So to realize everything you have is everything you already need. And I know that's where your work heavily focuses on, which is there's nothing to get, there's nothing to gain. Everything you have is everything you need. And I think I've just have a much deeper awareness of that. And starting from that point, that beneath your wounds, beneath your trauma, there is this incredible human being, your onlyness, your power, that I think pretty much everyone I've ever met, they have. And going on that journey of exploration with someone, which again, I think is where our worlds massively connect, is an honor, it's a privilege. It's like finding this treasure that every individual seems to have.
You use the word seems. Every individual seems to have. Is there a part of you that doesn't believe that everybody has that?
Well, I think it's more I just don't know. So I could presume, but then I don't know whether that's true. I believe it to be true, but I might be wrong. I don't know. But to date, I think that keeps my curiosity ever evolving. I think that's one of my superpowers. I'm just really curious as to what do you have? What is the experience like of being you? What have you been through? What have you gone through? Who do you want to become? Like when you coach people, you're asking those questions to unravel, to reveal what's going on behind the scenes. You can't fix what you don't acknowledge, you don't kind of take a look at. And I think a lot of people are frightened to stop and look at themselves and realize how great they are. I mean, it was Marianne Williamson, that Nelson Mandela speech around man's deepest fear is his greatness. Stop and realize that maybe there's more to you than meets the eye.
Why is that so scary?
That's a good question. Why is that so scary? Why do you think it's scary?
I think that it's scary because being your fullness, being in your fullness and behaving from the fullness of yourself means taking yourself to the edge, taking yourself to where beyond feels comfortable, because most of our lives we're looking to play in the center where that feels comfortable, where we appear to be, where it's comfortable for us, but it's also comfortable for other people. I've had.
When you just said that, I could feel a sense of fear in myself just by talking about going to the edge of something. Like, oh, where are we going? And I think you're right. I think it's not surprising that does scare people, because fear is an emotion we can all. And I think we are actually wired to survive. If you want to thrive and evolve consciously, that is, I'd say for most people, it's unfamiliar, it's unknown, it's a bit scary. So it's not surprise. I think you're right. I think that's one of the reasons people want to avoid that feeling. Who likes feeling fear? I think a few people maybe do, but most people, anything that evokes that feeling, you want to back off and say, well, I better stay within the zone of comfort, the zone of familiarity, the zone of who I think I am.
I think that when people see a level of success as well, that then becomes dangerous, because you have got to wherever you've got to through acting and behaving and thinking in a certain way. In order to go to the next level, there has to be an evolution of that. But we become wedded to, well, this is what we needed to do to get here. But once you've done that, you're in your zone of comfort. And so again, it's this constant evolution and this constant dancing with the edge.
Yeah. And that's where, again, just before we went live, we were talking about future self and identity. I find identity really interesting. that word, it means your repeated beingness. It's the story that you're telling yourself. And I think as a way of surviving, we have to fit into where we are. And I think one of the things I've really learned this year through going through one of the most challenging experiences of my entire life, I mean, beyond anything I would want anyone to consciously go through, but unfortunately, what we can go through, I think that life is about becoming through overcoming yourself, overcoming what you face. And what I've now learned more than ever is where I am is not who I am. I'm a widower, right? I didn't want to become a widower, but being a widower, I would say that's where I am. It's not who I am. Where I am is circumstantial. Where I am will always change. And I think now more than ever, Susie, I'm inspired and motivated to make people realize that there is a world beyond where you are. And that to me is the land of who you want to be, who you want to become, but recognize that who you already are right now is already enough. Unless we become more than our circumstances, I think what we tend to do is just repeat and find similar circumstances, and we wonder why nothing changes. What's your thoughts on that?
I 1000% agree with everything that you have just said. Maybe the only slight adjustment that I would make through my lens is the idea of needing to overcome, because and the thing is, the perspective that you're coming from at this point in time, like you said, overcome is exactly what you have been doing, because it has been so challenging to lose somebody that you love, not just somebody, but your life partner, and so that is an overcoming. And I think that from a wider lens, my perspective is more we have to go through. It's about going through life, and if you don't go through it, then
I agree.
you have this stagnation.
I think just like this lens that you can see the background, if you're watching this, is blurred. So it's like, where is the focus? And I agree with you, actually. And sometimes the words I use perhaps don't do justice to what I'm trying to say. And I think grief is a great example of what you just said. It's something you have to go through. It's like this passage that you have to go down, and it's not straight. It doesn't seem to be straightforward. But I agree. But it's what I go through so I can actually grow through. And I am growing through it. I am a better person. There's no question about it. I'm more aware. I'm more appreciative. I'm more grateful. I'm more grounded. But that doesn't take away just how painful and challenging life can be, and it's specifically things like grief. And I think actually what's really interesting about grieving the loss of your old self, to let go of an outdated version of yourself. I've never thought of it like that,
Yeah. And letting go of your old self, everything that you've always known, who you have always been, can feel absolutely terrifying. So I am curious, because I have been watching you from afar over the last year, and I obviously saw when Hannah passed away. And if I remember correctly, actually, when you were speaking at the event that we were at, I think at that point she was in a relatively stable, good, if we can use that word, place. And so it was, I think I was surprised how soon after that event that you shared your news.
Yeah.
Are you open to sharing a little bit about that time?
Of course, absolutely. Of course. Listen, of course. First off, I just want to say thank you to you, Susie, and the work that you do, because, it's people like you that make a massive difference to this world, as you encourage people to take ownership of who they are and where they are. And I just want to show you so much love for the work that you do, because you're beautiful, you're loving, you're kind, and you are someone who inspires me. I just want you to know that. Okay. Two peas of the very similar pod. I think we've worked out that a life of service is where the magic is. So I'll give you a bit of a backstory. I mean, you heard some of this when I spoke, but obviously for your listeners, I believe there is an answer to everything. That's just my belief. And I also believe in life. It's not what you know, it's who you know. These were two things that both of my parents taught me. So in the last 5 years, I lost my dad, I lost my mum, and then in May this year, my wife passed away. And in 2011, she was given 18 months to live with a very aggressive brain tumor. We found a treatment in America that was just miraculous. And she came back from the dead. I mean, literally in 2011, 2012, 2013, she just got better and better. She overcame all the odds. We got married. We had an amazing life together. It was challenging because I lived in fear, I think, a lot of the time that it would come back. But what was amazing about my wife is she would not be a victim of where she was. She knew who she wanted to be, and she inspired me in ways that's very, very hard to put into words. But in 2021, in December, she got unwell again, and then she got re-diagnosed a few months later, and she was given 6 months to live. Now, we could not go back to America for the same treatment. It wasn't possible for a few different reasons, and I almost gave up. But I found a treatment in Germany, and this was miraculous because this time the tumor was deeper. It wasn't in the same place. It affected her movement. She wasn't able to move properly. She wasn't able to think properly. But she had a virus treatment where they injected two viruses directly into her brain, and it triggered an immune response. And it was amazing. She literally came back again from dying. And when I saw you at that event, she was definitely on that road to recovery. But then in December last year, she caught COVID. And we didn't realize what was happening at that time. We didn't, but quite quickly things started to get worse. And then in May, she passed away, and it was very difficult and challenging. And grief, this type of grief, has been very different to the grief I've experienced with my mum and my dad. There's so much more tied up in this. As you said, she was my soulmate. She was my best friend. She was my business partner. And I miss her incredibly. But I do believe that when people pour into you into life, and so many people have poured into me, some of those people are still alive, but some of them have passed away, that it is an honor and a privilege to take their lives and bring that into every experience I have. So yeah, it's been a challenging year, to say the least.
Thank you so much for sharing. I really appreciate it. From the outside, it looked as though you just went for it. And when I say it, I suppose I want to say life, like full throttle after her passing. And I saw you traveling and you were interviewing people and you were, all over the place. And I am curious about how grief during that time feels like you may have slowed down a little on the traveling front, but how grief, how that dance with grief was manifesting for you whilst you were also really focused on these conversations.
So look, the whole world is definitely changed. The way I move through the world is completely different. I'm much more relaxed, I'm much calmer. But in answer to your question, the first thing I wanted to do, once I dealt with all of the stuff that you have to deal with when someone passes away, the first thing I wanted to do was say thank you to people, because there have been some people that have been unbelievably supportive during the 12 years of Hannah, her life, my life with her. And some of those people were in Houston, in Dallas, and I wanted to go and thank them. I wasn't running away. I just felt I have to say thank you to people. And I think to the outside world, it might look like I've been really busy, but for the first time in my life, I've really taken the foot off the gas, and I've had to spend a lot of time on my own. I've had to become my own best friend again, and I will not allow myself to not feel grief. I understand for some people that might be quite challenging, but if the emotion is there, I'm allowing myself to experience the rawness of that emotion. And for me, I was with one of my friends the other day who he also lost his wife. We were talking about this, and he was asking me about all the stuff I want to do in like work wise. And I was going, I feel really uncomfortable even thinking about that. I just want experience. That's why I want to travel more. I love people. I love connecting with people. But you know what, Susie? I think one of the biggest things that's happened is about faith. And I now have a completely different relationship with, like if you want something to happen, letting it happen as opposed to trying to force it to happen.
And the word faith is a very interesting word. And what does that mean to you? Because there's what you just said there, there's a difference between forcing something and allowing it. But where does faith, that actual word, sit within that for you now?
Well, it's quite hard to define. So I've been getting some amazing help from a friend called Dr. Ray Sylvester. He is a professor in Indianapolis. He's from the UK, and he helped me through this season. We were speaking nearly every single day, and his faith, his Christianity, is hugely important to him. And I see this faith that he has in God, and it's palpable. Now, I don't have that same faith. I would say I have a very similar faith that there is something out there that is supporting me that's outside of myself, or it's the same thing as myself, but it's more than me. And it's not something I talk about a lot because I just don't. And I think maybe I will more and more about I am supported, I am loved, I am cared for, I am connecting to this thing. And it's almost connected to nature that if you do the work, something will happen as a result of that work, but letting it happen as opposed to trying to push and push. You said before about life. I see life is a symbiotic relationship with nature. So it's something that allowing things to happen if you looked at my life for years, you'd realize, Pete, you're pushing all the time. Let go, let nature do its thing. What do you think about that? I'd love to hear what you have to say on this.
Faith is a big part of my value system. And what's interesting in having this conversation is that sometimes, even though we deeply value something, we don't always live from it. We're not always living from the most embodied place of it. But faith plus action equals miracles is the phrase that has changed my life. And I think that for me, when I say faith, it's belief in something bigger than myself. It is belief in myself. However, like you, over the years, I realized that many of the things that I have desired or manifested, consciously created, has come from my mind and my ego and what it is that I thought was the right thing, the thing that was needed. And I think that as I get older, the lessons that are unfolding for me are about releasing control and understanding that this tapestry of life that we are a part of is so much bigger than what my tiny mind can comprehend. And so, whilst I believe in infinite possibilities, whilst I believe that there is an answer to every single question, whilst I believe that everything is still possible, I also know that I have a very good friend who is 45 years old. She has bowel cancer. She has been diagnosed as terminal. Do I believe that she could still be with us in 10 years' time? Absolutely. I believe that that miracle is possible. And I also know that if she were to pass next year, it wouldn't be because there's nothing bigger than us. It wouldn't be because that miracles aren't possible, but it would be because there is something so much bigger at play that I can't possibly fathom with my tiny little mind. And I have faith in that now. Faith doesn't mean that everything that I want to happen happens, or I'm not good enough, or I should be a better manifester, or whatever, Faith is belief in something bigger than myself and knowing that we are all intertwined, and every single thing that happens is for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. We have a contract. That's why we're on this podcast together. Every single interaction I have is a soul contract for reasons that I'm either consciously aware of or not consciously aware of. I have faith in that. I believe in that.
Mm. I like what you said about a manifesto. That what is, a great way of thinking for people maybe is, what is your manifesto? What is it you want to do with what it is that you have? And you know what? One of the biggest problems I see in the world today is this obsession about right and wrong. Like, I'm right, you're wrong. This is the way it is. And it's like, well, hang on a second. My right is actually your left. So if I stop and look at the world through your eyes, I might learn something about myself or learn something about you. And I'm one of those people like you, Susie. I'm not here to tell anyone that I'm right. Even though I've wanted to be right through my own insecurities, I just want to open the world up so people can start to look at it in a different way, and then maybe make some decisions based on that new way of looking at things. And I love your faith, and I align myself to it. I resonate with it. And it's really empowering when you surround yourself with people. I think what's really beautiful is when you see a world that is bigger than just you, and you see a life of service. I think I've been reading Gabor. I can't remember his surname. He's written.
Gabor Mate.
Yeah. I mean, he's just unbelievable. I mean, he's just. I love the way he was interviewed by Piers Morgan, and I just love the way he was just so neutral and wouldn't get into a fight. He was just literally staying true to who he is. He knows who he is. And I love what he says about humans. We are wired to community. We are wired to connectedness. But what you also said, I thought was interesting, that most of us have to work at that. We have to bring a community to life. We have to be the person that asks, what can I do for you? We have to, and that comes down to the action piece. We humans, if we don't take responsibility for what we're doing, then we just tend to drift. We tend to just exist. And I love that when we open up to a world where we want to respond. We don't just want to keep reacting, and we want to make, it sounds like a cliche, but we want to build a better world and be a part of it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know whether it is a cliche or not, but I think it's important. I think that there have to be people like you and I that desire to create something better for the people who are not just coming after us, but for the people who are here now. And it's inspiring for me to be able to tune into your energy and notice and be aware of just how much you have to give, even at a time where many people justifiably would feel depleted.
Well, I was talking to my father-in-law yesterday, and he was incredible. I mean, I think about some of the things that people have to go through in life, and I think about what he went through, seeing his daughter pass away, and the fact that he was with Hannah's mum for 11 years, nursing her through dementia, and Hannah's mum passed away. And I think about how amazing he was and how much he supported me. But we talked yesterday because it was his birthday, and we were talking about what Hannah wanted. And it was beautiful to hear him say Hannah would want nothing more than for us to just get on with our lives. And that to me is once again a choice. I always think, what would these people want from me, my parents? What would they want from me? So I can't get lost too much in my sadness and my misery, because I still have this opportunity to move through. But that doesn't detract from the horrible feeling sometimes of just feeling like I'm never going to see her again in the physical form, and never going to be able to hold her hand in the way that I used to. And I take my hat off to anybody that has to go through grief, but it can get better. You can have another level of appreciation for life, and you can then help others. That's one of the things I want to do, help others who find themselves in this situation where everything is different, everything is changed.
I did a post on the 1st of December. It's the anniversary of the passing of my foster mother. And it's 26 years this year, which means that now for quite a significant period of time, she has been gone longer than I knew her for. And the post that I shared this year was one of real celebration. And I'm very wary of saying things like time is a great healer, and because time changes things. Time changes your relationship with grief. And at the same time, if somebody said you could have a day with her, you could sit face to face with her and you could have a day, God Almighty, I would take that in an instant. And it's 26 years. So grief definitely, it changes and evolves. I am so grateful for who I am today, and I credit who I am because of who she was and who my foster father was. And if you'd have said 26 years ago, you're going to
Wow.
feel like that, I would have been like, oh, well, I'm just a mess on the floor. I can't ever imagine feeling joy again when it happened. But now I'm so grateful.
Well, I celebrate her. I celebrate her. I didn't know her, obviously, but I feel like I do through you. And I love what you said there about celebration. I think celebration is a very underrated act. I think we all know the power of gratitude, being grateful for what you have, being grateful for what you want to have. But celebration to me is another choice that we can make. And you inspire me to celebrate my wife, to celebrate my mum and my dad, to celebrate all the people that have been poured into me. And how do I celebrate them? Well, I can talk about them, but I can also carry them with me. I believe that they're right behind me right now. And I am better because of them. And like you, I would do anything just to sit there with my wife and just be there. But my coach, who I had for 16 years, he passed away a number of years ago. He said to me once, he said, "Who do you think I ask when I need help?" I said, "I don't know." He said, "I asked my parents. They passed away a long time ago, but they're out there and they are prepared to help me, but they won't come unless I ask for help." He said, "It's what's called divine intervention." And again, it depend on your belief system, depend on what you want to think and believe. But I believe that they are there watching out over everything I do. And I just need to communicate with them.
Yeah. You said earlier about doing the work, and I'm curious, what does doing the work mean to you?
That's a very, very good question. I think it revolves around some form of consistency around certain behaviors. And I'm not here to tell people what they should do, but when we see how humans manifest something, it's normally the consistent action with certain things done over an extended period of time. So whether that's some form of physical exercise, whether that's some form of meditation, whether it's some form of practicing of gratitude, whatever it is, something that allows you to tap into the essence of who you are. So every day for me, I ask myself three questions. I ask myself the question, who am I? Who am I committed to becoming? And how would I know at the end of the day that this was a great day? So, and then it kind of puts me in a place of what is it I need to do? I'm not, what's the word? In terms of, I'm not totally meticulous in what I do, but I'm not far off from being quite regimented in certain things. So I practice breathing every day. I exercise every day. I walk every day. I practice celebrating. I celebrate people, and I'm celebrating you right now. I'll tell you what, I'm celebrating you, Susie, and I'm celebrating your foster mum. She, to me, sounds like she was just the most incredible human being who I would love to have met, and I want to know more about her. So, can you tell me about her sometime? I'd like you to come on my podcast, so we'll definitely set that up because I want the world to know who you are.
Bless you, Pete. Your heart is so big. When you think about who it is you're becoming, what's the vision that you have for yourself?
Again, a really good question. It's not too different to the person I am right now. It's like me just, it's like the knowing that there is a better version of me out there. And like I say, it might be just a few weeks away, it might be a few months away. It's not too far away, but it's like that's the person I'm committed to becoming. And with everything that's happened recently, I don't want to invest too much time into the future. I know that the future is here right now. So in what I'm doing now is creating a better future. And that's very different to me because for most of my life, I was driven from fear to move away from where I was. Then I was very much driven towards a world that was very far away. And now I'm just driven to the world I'm in right now and recognizing that if I do this and I do that, that tomorrow will be better based on what I'm doing today. And then just letting things happen as a result of my intentions. I've become a lot more intentional.
I think that is so powerful. Thank you so much for sharing. We've got a few minutes left. I would love to ask you a few of my quick fire questions that I ask everybody in celebration and excitement for the launch of my new book, Infinite Receiving. And my first question is what does infinite receiving mean to you, Pete?
Infinite receiving just means being open to everything, attached to nothing, basically. Sometimes I feel like I might not be, but most of the time I'm open to everything. I'm not attached to anything, and just let it all come, baby.
Yeah. Well, I was just about to say the next question is how good are you at that?
It's work in progress. I've definitely noticed since I've been doing it, more work is coming my way of the work I want to do, which is more speaking. I want to do more speaking work, and since I've been doing that, definitely stuff is coming for me that I'm not like pushing. I'm letting it happen because I am receiving what I'm putting out into the world.
I love that so much. Where or who in your life right now can you allow to love you just a little bit more?
Ooh, myself. That's a good question. That one. That's a good. It's just me. I think that's my big challenge at the moment is just learning to love myself more and more unconditionally.
What is your greatest attribute, Pete?
I think it's probably love, just love. I mean, it's very broad, but it's loving others, but it's becoming more of a superpower. Going back to the last answer, which is learning to love myself more.
Wrapped in your love is a huge amount of generosity. I really feel that from you. Every time you open your mouth, you're very, very generous. And I appreciate that deeply. So thank you. What is one thing that you are consciously working on manifesting right now?
More traveling and just more opportunities to get up in front of people and speak.
And finally, where can you allow yourself to be more supported in your life right now?
Oh, that's a really good question. I'd say allowing others to just support me, that want to support me, that maybe sometimes I just push that to one side, allow others to support me in the space that I'm in.
I want to invite you to really notice where you can say yes more to people wanting to hold you, support you, love you, be there for you today, tomorrow, and every day.
I'll do
I
it.
ask these questions because
You can hold me accountable to that if you want.
okay, so I ask these questions because they are the essence of what infinite receiving is. And I invite people on who I think already are the embodiment of receiving. And at the same time, knowing that there's always another level, there's always more abundance. And so I want to really just deep bow to you today. I think that you are an incredible human being, and I really wish for you even more abundance, flow, love, and all that you desire. I would love for you to share, Pete, where can my incredible listeners find out more about your work, where you're speaking next, and just what you're doing?
Well, the first thing I'm going to say is I'd ask everyone who's listening to this to buy Infinite Receiving. That's what I ask. I think we need to be careful sometimes that we start following too many people and we just get lost. So anyone who's listening to this is obviously already following you. In fact, a lot of people who won't be following you will listen to this because when you put this out, I'm going to tell everyone, listen to the podcast to connect with you. So I mean it. I would say start off with that. If you want to follow me on Instagram or LinkedIn, you can, but that's it. I'm not here to promote any courses or anything like that. I want to get a copy of your book, and I want to get you on my podcast in the new year.
Thank you so much. You're a star.
Listen, it takes one to know one, right?
If you've loved this podcast episode as much as I have, please do me a favor and share this with a friend. Share this with somebody who you know is going to get a huge amount of value from listening to Pete and his story. And tag us on Instagram, give us a shout, let us know what resonated with you. And in the meantime, please remember that faith plus action equals miracles. Thank you for listening to Infinite Receiving with me, Susie Ashworth. I'd love to share with you my Infinite Receiving activation audio. Go to susieashworth.com/activate infinite receiving.